Hey, Naperville, the market is on fire, continued week after week after week. And today we're going to talk about what's the difference between different down payments. How does it really affect your outcome? How does it affect your monthly payment going forward? So all my buyers out there, make sure you pay attention. We're talking about that and more up next on the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update. Owning a home in Naperville is about living a great life today and investing in a secure tomorrow. On this show, we're going to give you the tools to do both. Welcome to the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update. What's happening in Naperville? I'm Chris Grano with Keller Williams. This is Todd Gosden with Compass Mortgage, and we are your hosts for the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update. Todd, how you doing this week?
I am doing great. The sunshine is out. It is warm out, though, but not complaining. 6 months till Christmas. Let's make sure we enjoy this.
That's right. I got a notice from ComEd. They were going to shut our power off yesterday, so we deep cooled the house down to 64 in anticipation of that, and then it never happened. So, oh well.
How about that, right?
All right, but I'll tell you what is also hot, and sorry to be a little punny here, but the real estate market, man, is still on fire. And it's funny. So we talked last week about what the results were from that week that included Memorial Day weekend. And,
yes.
And we noticed, we kind of predicted it going into it, that there would probably be a little bit of a cool off. Hey, people are going to go to the lake for the weekend, and everybody just wanted to be excited about being outside, right?
Totally.
So we did. We saw a little bit of a cool off. And then this week, I'm looking at the numbers going, oh my goodness. I mean, it is just back in full force. So everybody took a brief pause, and they are right back in it. So let me talk about the numbers real quick. Let's look at this week, a huge uptick. So we had a little bit of a downturn in new listings. We had 4% new listings last week because of the holiday weekend. Not a big downturn there. We had our biggest downturn in houses under contract. So there were less buyers out shopping over the holiday weekend. That was down 28%. Now we come to this week, new listings are actually up 16%. So 141 new listings in Naperville. That is I'm scrolling back here, that is one of the highest numbers all year. So it's a big week for new listings coming to market. So that's good news for you buyers. However, homes put under contract are up 32% from last week.
Wow.
So, I mean, buyers are just keeping right pace with what's going on. And when we then take a look at the pace of the market, the month supply of inventory, these are actually some of the lowest numbers I've seen in Naperville all year. Under 500,000, we're at 1.81 months supply of inventory, and 500,000 to 750, 1.77 months supply of inventory. So just a refresher, if this is the first time you're listening, that's on the low end of the spectrum.
Yeah, sure.
For inventory, which means strong, negotiating position for sellers. We have really short market times right now, so we're looking at most properties are selling 2 to 3 weeks on average in those ranges. So, I mean, it's tough. But I will tell you, I've had a lot of conversations with buyers who are ready, and some of them are a little nervous, but you got to have a game plan. Todd and I have talked about that just week after week after week. And I'm meeting with a few buyers this weekend, next weekend, and I said, hey, I know it's daunting, but if we have a game plan, I can promise you that a lot of buyers won't, and we can still win, and you don't have to give an arm and a leg to get the house. So just got to have those conversations. Call Todd, call myself, and get prepared. So, Todd, what can you tell us? What are you seeing out there from your perspective?
Well, I obviously, based on the numbers, I mean, inventories are surging. People are slowing down just a little bit. So applications and purchase contracts are down month over month for the last 2 months. And and let's not misrepresent that. That doesn't mean there's a shortage of people wanting to buy. That means that the frenzy may be slowing just a little bit because the number of inventory that's coming available is going to actually be healthier for the market, right? Seeing 25, 30 offers a house is very difficult, right? Values have stabilized. So things are really shaping up well for really a strong summer and fall for those who really want to buy. No shortage of inventory, great interest rates. Everything is seriously in the buyer's hands right now to be able to hopefully get the house of their dreams.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a really interesting fall and third quarter, fourth quarter of this year, because we normally see traditionally a cool off from the buyer's perspective. So if that holds true to people's patterns, we should see a little bit of a balancing out here. So
I think so too. No question about it. I think that there's no slowdown to the market. It's going to be this way for a few years.
Yeah. Well, that's right. And I had that conversation this week with a buyer who said, well, I don't know, we may just wait and we may wait it out. And I said, without even giving you any scare tactics, I'm just being honest with you. There's no indication that prices are going to slow down. Now, we may not have this crazy frenzy a year from now, but they were looking at, well, I think we'll wait for prices to go down. I said, are you prepared to wait 5, 6, 7 years?
Well, and let's chat about that. We should chat about that for one moment, if you're okay with that, because here's the thing I think everyone needs to remember is people don't care about interest rate. And as much as you say you do, when interest rates were 17%, the United States still sold 5 million homes. Well, last year, 5.64 million homes were sold at the lowest interest rates in history. So perspective. Now, what really is what's going to shake it up is what you just said, is because we have to pay attention to what does the value look like in relationship today? Because if you bought a $400,000 house today and it went up 10% value, the difference to you is you're borrowing $8,000 more money and have $32,000 more in debt just by a house going up $10,000. I mean, $40,000. So that is real impact to the bottom line versus interest rate going up 1% and changing your payment $129.
Right.
See what I'm saying? Is so I think people need to keep that in mind. Is interest rate, yes, it is important, but it's more importantly that if you hold off and you're buying a house for $40,000 or $50,000 more, it will hurt.
Yeah, and it really depends on what you're doing too, because
that's right.
I talked to a lot of. Well, we've said that a million times. We say that every week. Every situation is different, but I'm talking to folks who, okay, so if you're moving up,
yeah,
or if you are, I'm talking to family members who are actually going to downsize, but they're moving from near west suburbs to further west suburbs, where in their particular case, they're moving to from a lower price point to a higher price point. So even though they're going to downsize, they're still going to buy a more expensive house.
That's right.
And so for them, they're going to sell and gain. Okay, so if all things are equal, yeah, they've gained 10, 15% in the last year or two on their value, but they're going to go spend that same amount more on a more expensive house. So dollar for dollar, for them, it's not going to. It's just more about that lifestyle than it is about the dollars.
Sure it is.
You're right. Waiting is not necessarily going to be
better
benefit. No, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So we talked last week, Todd, about the difference and dispelling some of these myths that I talk to buyers every day, and I get people, and I know you do too. I get people locked in on statements, and it's things they've heard either from family or read about online. And I mean, I have a lot of people that will still tell me, oh, I don't think I can get a conventional loan because I don't have 20%. And I'm like, who told you had a 20% down, to get a conventional loan? There's a lot of things involved in there, but all things being equal, you don't have to have 20% down.
It's a choice.
And it totally. And I'll talk to the people who will say, well, I really just can't, I don't want to increase the price point, by X amount of dollars, because if I do, then I can't put 20%. And I'm like, okay, but if you put 17%, and you're in a home that makes you happier and that better suits your life, then what does it matter? I mean, you're talking about a very small difference in increase in monthly payments. So we talked offline. I know there's only so much you can confirm when it comes to these because every situation is totally different. But can you go over just some of these broad generalities when we talk about increasing, decreasing the payment?
Well, absolutely. And I think that everybody needs to remember is there's so many different circumstances that go into play. And if I wanted to truly measure it, it could be 15 to 18 different measures per person that would dictate payment.
Right.
Okay. So if you think about it in that perspective, is no one person is alike. Everyone is an individual to the experience. So many times people say, well, my neighbor got this. Well, unless your neighbor wants to divulge all of their details of their finances, that we really can't do a comparison to them to you. Right? Because we're comparing apples and oranges, right? So I think the first thing we want to remember is that depending on the purchase price of the house, you're talking $5 to $7 per thousand difference in payment. So when you're squabbling over $1,500 and it means $10 to your monthly payment, do you really want the house? Right. That's what you really have to think about, because I had one recently where they were, I think, $800 to $1,000 off and they both walked away. I'm like, you guys are walking away from I think it was like $7.50. Right. So you have to really want the house. If this is your dream, then go get it, right? That's number one. Number two is when you're buying a house, yes, you can put down 20%. You can also put down 17.5. You can put down 15%. You can go all the way down to 3%. But the factor that comes into play is mortgage insurance. If you're not putting down 20%, you're going to have mortgage insurance. And someone said, well, listen, I have less than 20% down. I didn't pay mortgage insurance. Well, that's what they call lender paid mortgage insurance, where you actually paid a higher interest rate so you didn't have to pay the mortgage insurance. Mm-hmm. So we can weigh out both those options, but typically it wins where you're paying the mortgage insurance versus taking a higher interest rate. Think about paying a higher interest rate on your overall debt for X number of years. You're going to see very quickly that it doesn't make a lot of sense. So if someone is putting down, let's say they're buying a house for $400,000 and putting down 20%, there's no mortgage insurance involved. Right. And frankly, if they're really well qualified with a great credit, they're probably going to see a payment of $2,100 to $50 to $2,200 with tax and insurance and something along those lines. Mm-hmm. But the other thing to think about is this. So many people come into it, especially in this market, going, I just want to make sure I can do all my DIY projects because I want to do the projects. I love doing the painting and fixing the patios. Well, great. Rather than doing a renovation loan, maybe you just take less money down and take the really good rates of today because you're not going to be able to beat that in a renovation. Maybe you're going to take 17.5% or do 15% down to have the extra cash to replace the carpet or painting or whatever you want to do. If you're going to go from $2,200 to $2,250 to $2,300, that's the difference between 20% versus 17.5% versus, you see what I'm trying to say here is if we can look at a difference of, I don't know, $120 to $135, the difference between 5% down and 20% down, but it gives you that ability to do some projects, or you just don't want to liquidate all of your cash reserves in case the furnace goes out or the roof needs to be replaced. That's what you have to think about really, really when you're looking at a house. And I think the other thing people need to think about is this. Most people think, well, I can do a 30-year rate, a 20-year rate, and a 15-year rate. Technically, you can do any term of year you want. So if, let's say you did a 30-year, but you wanted to pay it off a little bit quicker, you can always do 27 years. You can do 23 years. You can do 17 years. Any term of loan is doable. So really, this is a customizing experience to your need. And I think when you're sitting down talking to someone, you really want to have that ability to customize something you're looking for yourself and your family to fit your financial needs. And that is purely doable anytime you talk to somebody.
I think we need to encourage more people to get geeked out about math, because when you're talking about all this, I just get excited because of the customization, because I know that I could sit down with you for an hour or whatever, right? And say, all right, Todd, here's what I want to do. Help me figure out how I can do it. And what are my options? And like you said, there's no shortage of options. And one thing I think that I've had to get some folks over, the hump in their mind on when it comes to PMI specifically is, like you talk about, the very little difference in a monthly payment between 17% down and 20% down, even considering the PMI. Correct me if I'm wrong, Todd. There's a difference in your monthly PMI payment at 17% versus 5%, right?
Well, not much. So let's say, for example, if somebody's really well qualified and they are buying that $400,000 house, it's 17.5% down. It's probably $39 to $45 a month for mortgage insurance. If you bump yourself up to 5% down, it may change that number by $5 or $6.
Okay, so it's actually pretty close. Okay, so that's good to know. So that's even even more in the favor of these different options. And then the other thing I try to tell people is, so I had talked to a lady. She said, I just can't have PMI. I can't have PMI. I said, if you're putting 17, 18% down, your PMI is going to be gone
before you know it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you pay that for the life of the loan.
I have a client who bought a house 6 months ago. He's already called the bank and arbitrating to have the mortgage insurance removed, which it will be removed because his value is justified now to have it removed. And he paid it for 5 or 6 months.
Right.
It's that easy. Yeah. So customization is really the key. And I think that's why when you're out looking for partnerships, looking for someone that's going to guide you, make sure that ultimately it doesn't matter how much house you buy. It matters about your monthly payment and your financial needs on a month-to-month basis. And obviously, the lower the term goes, the lower the interest that you're paying. But that has to be discussed in a conversation of, how is it going to impact you today versus tomorrow? Because you can always accelerate your payments and pay them like a 15-year if you get to that point and the kids are getting a little older and have less expense. So nothing stops you from paying off a mortgage. The only thing that stops us is us.
And would you agree, Todd? I mean, because I feel this way, and I just have to imagine you do too. Do you wish that people would spend more time asking these types of questions?
Well, and I think part of it is yes, but I also think it's my responsibility. I always say, listen, we're going to have a conversation. I have done this so long. I'm going to answer every one of your questions before you ask a question.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because if I'm not focused on answering all those questions and they forget to ask something that's really important, then it becomes not such a great experience. Well, I didn't know that. Right. So my job is to make sure that I answer every question before you ask it.
I love that approach. I couldn't agree more. I feel like my consultations, particularly with buyers, tend to get longer and longer as I go throughout my career, because, you know, I learn more and more about, hey, we really need to talk about this. We really need to cover this.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's all about setting those expectations.
Expectation is everything.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, thank you for touching on that topic. I think that's something that people really gotta dial into. If you have more questions about your specific scenario, because Todd can't, hit on everything, shoot him a text, send him an email, get a hold of him. We got all his contact information here in the show notes. Todd, thank you again.
You're welcome.
For sharing with us your knowledge. Hey, you guys, make sure you're following the podcast. I see the views out there. I appreciate it. We've got some good comments lately, so thank you. Be sure to check in on YouTube, youtube.com/Chris Grano. Go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and don't forget we're trying to share this and get the word out. So make sure you share it with your friends and tell everybody you know about the Naperville Real Estate Weekly Market Update. We'll see you guys next week. Todd, have a good one.
See everybody.